Hello, we are in week 17 with the Course Companion Group. This is the Course Companion Group's reading for Chapter 7, the extension of the kingdom, Day 113, Section 6, the ego's use of projection. And then I'll read Day 114, Section 8, your boundless self-fullness. And I read the text on a separate video. And this is the Course Companion Study Guide for these days, 113 and 114. Day 113, Section 7, the ego's use of projection. I thought I could keep my top up, but the glare is too much, so bear with me. Okay. This section continues the discussion of that crucial subject from yesterday, projection. It starts out with an important contrast between projection and extension. Both are variations on the same fundamental dynamic in which mind always expresses outward what is within. From that common point, however, projection and extension diverge dramatically. When you project, you are throwing away something that you don't want. You see it outside, so you can tell yourself it's not inside. That's what we were told way back in Chapter 1 when projection was first introduced. Projection still has this hurling connotation because it involves hurling something you do not want and regard as dangerous and frightening to someone else. And that's in the text, Chapter 1, Section 35. In contrast, when you extend, you give what you value in order to keep it in your own mind. So now there's something you want in your mind, and while still retaining it, you merely extend the perception of it to others. The difference is in the very words. Think, for instance, about a projectile. When launched, a projectile leaves you and travels to its target. In contrast, to extend, according to Merriam-Webster, means to spread or stretch forth, to stretch out to fullest length. Rather than conveying the sense of something being catapulted from one place to another, it has the sense of something staying in place and merely stretching forth from there. A synonym for extend, in fact, is enlarge, as in extended the patio to the back of the house. Given the difference, which one do we want? Do we want to be in a mode of chucking our inner garbage onto others? Even if we were to succeed in putting all of the garbage on them, we would be empty, having failed to cultivate anything of value in ourselves. Or do we want to be in a mode of taking what is most prized in us and extending it to others, so that now we and they share it, and now it's strengthened in ourselves? The question then is simple. Do we want to live in abundance or scarcity? The section then goes on to explaining how projection leads to anger. We begin by feeling in conflict, torn between ego and spirit. In response, the ego prescribes a painkiller that numbs us but doesn't actually heal the problem at all. It tells us to project the conflict onto others. What this means, to use language that we see Jesus use in Cameo 20, is that we project one side of the internal conflict. We project the ego side. Now we look within, and all we see is spirit, innocence, and good intentions, and sincere actions. We thus appear to be whole. The inner conflict is gone. Now all the conflict is coming from the other person who, being soaked through with ego, is driven to attack innocent little us for no good reason. What then will be our reaction to this person? Anger. Yes, this anger implies there is ego in us, but we can take refuge in the fact that we didn't put it there, the other person did. So that's how anger happens. What can we do about it? We can realize that projecting conflict involves some serious fallacies. The most serious one is that giving something away to others is how to keep it, not how to get rid of it. Whatever we express outward becomes reinforced in us, not voided. This goes back to the law of mind we saw in the previous 2 sections. We cannot truly fragment the mind in 5-2, and whatever we see in one person we will see in all, ourselves included. Projection then completely backfires. I think what actually happens is that the house of our mind becomes disturbingly split between a ground floor that is neat, tidy, and spotless, and a basement that is stuffed to the ceiling with ancient, rotting garbage. All that garbage we imagine we had chucked onto others, but that actually never left our own house. And that just grew in the process. As we walk around on the ground floor, everything seems really fine, but then occasionally our foot breaks through a rotting floorboard, and now we are in the garbage up to our knee, having no idea how such a thing could happen. If this is the best the ego can do at fixing the conflict that caused it in the first place, surely this is an argument for ditching the ego altogether, for giving up on projection, and for putting all of our mind behind extending love. And I think these are all section overviews and reflections are from Robert Perry, editor of the complete and annotated edition of A Course in Miracles. So these comments are from Robert Perry, which I thought they were, but I just wanted to make sure. And then day 114, section 8, your boundless self-fullness. This section is primarily about our extension in heaven, about us creating in heaven. Therefore, we first need to get over the hurdle of that concept, which is perennially, I don't know if I said that right, perennially confusing to course students. I maintain that the reason it's so confusing is not because it is conceptually difficult, but because it is unfamiliar. I don't know anywhere it is taught outside the course, which means that groove has not had much chance to get laid down in our brains. Think of it this way. Do you have difficulty thinking that God can create? Don't think in terms of His creating planets. Rather, think of Him creating minds and souls. It is hard to imagine God, through the sheer power of His will, bringing into being living minds? Of course not. That was a question. Is it hard? That, after all, is God's function. He is the creator. Now simply imagine that in heaven we have the same power. Through the power of our will, we can create living minds, minds that once created never die. Surely that can't be difficult to understand conceptually. What can be difficult about it is simply the idea that we can do what has traditionally been seen as solely the province of God. The picture this section paints is of our creating in heaven. The picture this section paints of our creating in heaven is something I find very inspiring. In heaven, your self-fullness is as boundless as God's. Why are we so full? Because our consciousness actually includes the consciousness of all our brothers. Because the whole power of the sonship is our fullness. Because, being a creation of God, we share His being and have all His power. This fullness cannot be contained. Our being is so full so overflowing that we literally learn to share it. In our creation, God extended His being to us, and now all we want to do is keep that expansion going, to further extend God's being through our own creating. Paradoxically, we perform this extension because of our fullness, and at the same time, it is our fullness. We can see that when Jesus says, calls our act, we can see that when Jesus says, calls our act of creating our fulfillment, Think of the word fulfillment. It often carries the sense of being fulfilled within through accomplishing something without, as when we speak of fulfilling one's dreams. The idea is that when you fulfill your dreams without, you feel fulfilled within. This is how it is in heaven. Our self-fullness lies in the fulfillment of our function. As recent sections have reminded us, this fulfillment is our joy. By creating, we are doing what we are literally born to die. By creating, we are doing what we were literally born to die, born in the sense of born in heaven. This is a little confusing to me, the wording of this. I hope it makes more sense to hear it. I'll have to listen. This may sound very distant from our everyday lives, and in a sense it is. Of course, it would help if I didn't scramble the words. Since we do not create outside of heaven, who do you see in this world creating living minds? But this section, along with other sections, tells us that we are depressed and unfulfilled now because we miss this function. We feel empty now because we are not doing what we were created to do. Talk about a new interpretation of our low spirits. In the absence of our true self-fullness, we turn to selfishness in an attempt to fill the perceived void within. Yet this selfishness, of course, being the exact opposite of extension, just makes the emptiness deeper. How do we find our way back to the function that everything in our being yearns to fulfill? We give miracles to our brothers. We reawaken to extension in heaven by extending on earth. That's why we are following this course. Section 114, day 114, Section 8, your boundless self-fullness. I'm going to read this paragraph once more, if you don't mind. Paradoxically, we perform this extension because of our fullness, and at the same time, it is our fullness. We can see that when Jesus says, calls our act of creating our self-fulfillment. Think of the word fulfillment. It often carries the sense of being fulfilled through accomplishing something without. As when we speak of fulfilling one's dreams, the idea is that when you fulfill your dreams without, you feel fulfilled within. This is how it is in heaven. Our self-fullness lies in the fulfillment of our function. As recent sections have reminded us, this fulfillment is our joy. By creating, we are doing what we were literally born to die. Born in the sense of born in heaven. I don't know. Anyway, I love you and I thank you for joining with me. Please join me tomorrow for day 115. Have a beautiful day. I love you.